Hello and thank you for watching. Let's jump straight into the video. This is a new cage to both of the mice so that it's neutral territory. The female's bedding and also some used toys have been put in so that the male can smell her before meeting her directly, and it'll also allow her to feel a little bit more secure without feeling territorial. And you can actually see it is the female, the black female, to approach first and try and introduce herself, but the male seems to be more interested in generally exploring and trying out some of the new toys than she is in meeting her. So this is a good opportunity to discuss what's actually happening here. My hope is to be able to bond and breed from these two mice. The male is named Mather and he's an Asterix Himalayan, and this just means that he's white with darker areas on his face, feet and base of the tail, and the Asterix gene means that his fur is curly. When younger it's got visible curls, but as they age these loosen, leaving the fur looking quite thick but also with a wavy texture. The female is a black self satin. The satin gene makes the fur look more shiny. It is darker to see in black coloured mice, but in white coloured mice or light coloured, it will make the fur look almost iridescent. Now the male does continue to play for some time, but then does enter the house to meet the female. In normal introductions of mice, they'll greet by sniffing each other's faces, which looks almost like they're kissing, and that's going to lead to some more intimate sniffing, often followed by some chasing behaviour. If both of the mice are of the same gender and attempting to arrange dominant rankings, that chase could cause and could lead to a fight. So when females are entering a new female group, you may find that she gets chased a lot and there may be some fighting. If it's two adult males meeting each other, then that chase would almost always end in a fight. In courtship behaviour, the chase should lead to mounting behaviour when the chase ends. The male here, however, makes the chase actually more aggressive. He actually bites and holds onto the female, and that's not something I would expect to see in normal courtship. He appears to be reacting to her as a competitor for the territory and resources rather than the opportunity to breed. And the male here can be seen doing something called tail banging. So this is something mice will do when they want to display that they are feeling angry or frustrated at another mouse. The male then continues to look around the house and look for the female, but when he does find her again, he continues with the chasing and the biting, but you can actually see he also at one point holds on and shakes his head. Now that could cause some severe injuries if left unchecked, and why introduction should be closely monitored, even of mice of opposite genders. And you can see that the female is becoming quite distressed by this. She's increasingly running quicker and quicker and trying to move away from him. And here she actually forms a defensive posture. So she goes into the boxer's pose. And normally you'll see that when mice are squaring off about to fight, it's not aggressive, it is a defensive posture. But it is ignored by the male, and they actually have a true fight. That's what a mice fight would look like, with them both rolling and biting each other. I'm unsure why the male reacted this way. In this instance, these two mice don't know each other, they've never met before, and more importantly, they've never bred before. So I don't know if perhaps being uncertain what they should be doing has led to some of this aggression. But again, I wouldn't expect to see this level of aggression even in mice that have never bred. So perhaps one of the causes is that he's feeling territorial of the new area and wanting to claim it for himself. But again, I'm unsure what led him to that decision. Now, because of his aggression, I did take the female out while she was at the front of the cage so that I was able to check her over and check if she had any wounds or bleeding. They were both given some time to settle down, and I removed the objects from the cage so the male feels less desire to try and own everything in the cage. And you can see this has actually helped a bit, because here the male advances to the female, and although he does sniff her quite roughly and attempt to mount her, he is no longer biting or attacking her. The female wasn't particularly receptive, but nor did she run away. Females are often quite shy and coy at the beginning of courtship. Males should introduce themselves with those kisses, followed by some sniffing, to assess if a female is in her reproductive state. That would be when the female would be most likely to be willing to breed with a male, and it allows the male to assess whether the mouse that he's met is of the correct gender and age and reproductive status. And here you can see that he does continue to attempt to mount the female, but what she does is she will often sit down as he tries to mount her, and that makes it impossible for him to be able to successfully copulate. And that's going to be how the females are able to control the actual mating process. Although males tend to be much more in control of the introduction, females are in control of actual copulation. The mice then separate for a little bit, but it's actually the female that comes to look around as to where the male may have gone, and that suggests that she's either close to or in estrus or her fertile time. She's actually sort of pauses to let him get close enough quite often, and then she'll pull away. So she's leading him a little bit in this courtship, and wants to be near him, but obviously doesn't want to be mounted by him just yet. Now, female mice will come into estrus every 4 to 5 days, and that's going to last for about 15 hours. If she becomes pregnant, gestation period is 21 days before pups are born, and interestingly, females can become pregnant almost immediately after giving birth. Now, this cage is smaller than their normal living spaces, and as you can see, mice are quite active. It's one of my specialised breeding cages, and it's small for the specific reason of allowing this male and female interaction, while also allowing the female to feel in control of her environment. When she gives birth in here, it will allow her to feel safe, and that will give her confidence. And when mums demonstrate that confidence, it often means that the pups that she raises are more tame, more friendly, and more confident themselves. So that's one of the reasons why my breeding cages are smaller than their normal living cages. I will just note that the cage is actually 40 by 50 by 30, which is just shy of the recommended for 2 female mice. The male does continue with numerous attempts, but as you can see, the female is very good at trying to rebuff him, and more importantly, making it impossible for him to actually copulate. So the camera is about to switch over to night mode as the light levels begin to fall, and this brings an interesting change in the male's behaviour. He begins to become quite animated, and the reason for that is that mice are crepuscular, so they're often active in the early mornings and late evenings, or dawn and dusk basically. So it would be quite natural for him to now feel a little bit more confident, and have a greater desire to explore. And as you can see, he is now happily moving about the cage. And again, you can see mice are very active, so they do need lots of toys and lots of things to climb on and lots of things to play with. So the other objects that were in the cage will be added before I let them go to sleep overnight, but for now it worked quite well to help focus the male on not needing or feeling the urge to control that environment and own it for just himself, and that has allowed him to approach the female in a much friendlier manner and made her more receptive. So it did work in this instance. Now, the hope would be, if copulation is successful, that the female would have a litter of pups. Now, litters of pups can vary in size. I have had mice give birth and successfully raise 1 mice, although that is very rare. They'll often have anywhere between 4 and 8, up to a maximum of 12. Now, with the genes involved in this pair, he's not a satin, and that's quite important because satin's one of the easy genes to discuss because it's a recessive gene. So for her to be a satin, she must have both copies of that gene, and for him to not be a satin, he will either need to have no copies of the gene or 1 copy. If he has no copies of that gene, all of the pups will come out het form, and that basically just means that they are heterozygous for that satin gene. If he has if he's a carrier, if he has that recessive gene, then some of the pups will come out recessive or satins, and they would be homozygous for that satin gene. For those of you that have staked, I'm going to include a clip of the female's vocalizations. While you listen to that, write a comment. Let me know if you think we are going to manage to get a successful copulation, and if we do, if we're going to have any pups.